Always something new. Now, as executive director, I think you actually went out to many classrooms and to other locations to do talks.
I got to teach the third grade.
And maybe even college classes too. Maybe you can tell us about that.
Yes, my favorite story was that I taught grammar school, middle school, college, and graduate students. I spoke much slower to the graduate students than to the others. They took notes. When the Board of Education in Contra Costa County and most schools decided that the third grade was the perfect time to teach the history of the community. And so my daughter is a third grade teacher, and she invited me to her school. And from that, I began to invite the third grade teachers to come once a year, the beginning of the semester, to Contra Costa County Historical Society. They started at Pleasant Hill. We were still there, so it was before 2000. And they would look at our resources and make notes, come back and work, or invite me to come, and I put together a slideshow, and I brought my mother's collection and would tell them what it was like to live in the olden days, as they called it. And I would tell them about Amelia and how she grew up and went to a one-room schoolhouse and rode a horse. They thought that was great. I do remember going to one class in Antioch, and they'd all been to Black Diamond. They knew where it was. You never tell third graders, you never make a comment about age to third graders, because they will ask you how old you are. And so on one occasion, I said, do you know anyone? Because you encourage them to ask people who are older than they are what their life was like when they were growing up and what the community was like. And so I said, do you know anyone older than me? So of course their first question is, how old are you? And I said, well, how old do you think I am? And I got 102 and 22, and I said, oh, you I'll take home with me. And some little girl said, well, you're not as old as Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson was a teacher.
Uh-oh.
Mr. Wilson must have been 30 years younger than I. But Mr. Wilson had graying hair. In fact, it was a balding head. And as my daughter said, was he taller than you? Because usually third graders judge you if you're taller, you're older, and if you're shorter, you're younger. I said, no, he was shorter than I. But they decided he was older than I, and he had been very upset with them because they did what I told them to do. My slide projection machine had been taken apart, and they'd indexed all of my slides, and they'd put them back in before I could do it. And I said to the students at the beginning, now I don't know if these are in the right order or not. You may have to stand on your head when I turn on the machine. And the very first picture was upside down. And they all stood on their heads. I mean, they all bent over.
You gave them a little activity, huh?
He had left the room and was coming back in. He thought they were misbehaving and just clapped his hands and said, stop that. And I said, no, 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 I told them to do this. Well, I'm not sure he thought I was conducting his class the way it should be. They wanted to try on the clothes, and I let them. That was the whole idea. This is a touch and hold and talk about, and he wanted them to sit in their chairs and not touch anything. But they thought he was older than I. Needless to say, he did not invite me back. I did go to other classes. I taught Dr. Orsi's class several times. Dr. Orsi, when he moved to the campus in Concord, had his evening history class, and he would bring his kids to Martinez, or send his children to Martinez. And he called one day and said, I have to cancel the class. I hurt my leg in skiing. And I said, too bad, I was going to show my slideshow tonight. And somewhere in that conversation, he decided I was going to teach the class.
Oh, okay.
So that became a habit for several years.
Wow.
I also taught the history of Contra Costa County to a DVC class for several years, which made it full circle, since that's where I went to begin with, and it started the whole thing.
Exactly, exactly. Can you tell me a little bit about the Landmarks Committee, how that came to be and what's that about?
After we opened the Historical Society in Pleasant Hill, they brought all their boxes of the history. And I discovered in going through it that we had been appointed in 1966. We'd been appointed by the Board of Supervisors as
County Board of Supervisors.
Exactly.
Yes, uh-huh.
We'd been appointed as on a committee with Parks and Rec, with the Community Development Association, to be on a committee for parks. There was only one county park. It was in Pacheco, and it was long gone. And I tucked it away. I made a copy and put it on my desk. And somewhere in 2000, after 2000, I was invited to go to the Diablo Country Club to talk to a group. And the gentleman from the Community Development Association, County Development Association, was there. They wanted to be designated a district, a landmark, to preserve a landmark status. There was no committee. The gentleman and I were on our way back to our cars afterwards because he was going to go to the Board of Supervisors and present this to them. And I said, you know, we're already on a committee. And I gave him a copy. And within a week, the Landmarks Committee was established. It still functions now. The Landmark Committee, has designated the Diablo as a community landmark district, parts of Kensington, parts of Knightson, Byron Hot Springs. They've done quite a bit of job. It's a separate committee, an outreach from us.
And I recall earlier, too, in an earlier conversation with you, you had talked about the Pony Express, Overland Trail, and working with the Department of Interior.
So much fun. As I said earlier, Roy Bloss was the president when I came on board, when I joined. Roy Bloss is the author of The Great Gamble, which is the story of the Pony Express, the history of the Pony Express. Roy Bloss was adamant that we know about the Pony Express. We have a huge collection here of his that we collected, and the article was in the paper. I believe it started because Frank Bray arrived at the office one day in Pleasant Hill and said, would you like this horseshoe? And he handed us a horseshoe which came from Toddy Briones, who was a grandson of a blacksmith here in Martinez. Briones, the original Briones, had been on a ferry, which was a raft-like thing that came from Benicia to Martinez when the first Pony Express came through Contra Costa County. It seems the Pony Express horse had lost its one shoe. Briones was a blacksmith. They traded horses. The horse went on to San Francisco to deliver the mail and came back, and the horseshoes were a collection. And of course it wound up in the Veal collection and then wound up in our collection. And again, I called the reporter and it went into the newspaper. A gentleman whose name was Tom Cruise was very, very interested in the Pony Express, came to our office, read everything that we had in our collection. And I remember saying, he's going to be finished one of these days. You know, he really needs to join our organization. We need to find the next project for Tom. And he did finish reading everything. And I said, you know, Tom, we really don't know the trail. And so Tom Cruise, for a year or more, went out with Roy Bloss, and they traced the trail, the original trail, what's called the Overland Trail. When the Pony Express came into Sacramento, the pony and the rider would board the Antelope, which was the name of the ship that came from San Francisco to Sacramento. But the Antelope didn't sail on Sundays. And if the Pony Express had met Indians or had met snow, it didn't arrive on schedule, and it would arrive on Sundays. So they continued on what was called the Overland Trail. Tom and Roy, Tom specifically, found the trail all the way down from Sacramento through Contra Costa County down to Oakland, where it boarded another little boat and went over to San Francisco.
Wow.
The Department of Interior accepted our presentation, and we are on the map. We had a huge parade here in Martinez, led by the Pony Express. We became Pony Express members for a while. There was a huge plaque down on Main Street that the Contra Costa County Historical Society put up honoring the Pony Express Overland Trail.
Wow, that's a wonderful story. We've talked about a lot of things today, Betty. Is there anything else you'd like to share that I have not asked?
No, well, you just keep mentioning something and it'll remind me. I'm holding this because we did have more collections. Since we moved to Martinez, we've received the Sharkey Collection, and Sharkey was the editor of the first newspaper, the Martinez Gazette. There's a plaque on the sidewalk down in front of the courthouse. Nancy Fahden was the first woman to become a supervisor in Contra Costa County. When she retired, she gave us her collection. She thought we were pretty special. Virgie Jones was a member of our historical society. Her collection came to us when she passed away. Sandy Kimball, whom I mentioned before, moved from this area. She wrote the book Moraga.
And she also served on the board at one time.
She served on the
yes.
board for quite a long time, and she gave us all of her collection when she moved out of the area. On one occasion, when we were still in Pleasant Hill, a gentleman came in and said, "I'm from the Contra Costa County Soil Survey Department, and we need," I always found this amusing, they would come to us and say, "We need room." We who were in a one-room schoolroom, and then later a half a room, people would clean out their closets or clean out their departments and move them to us. But the soil survey people were inundated with way too many maps, and would we take their collection? So they gave us aerial photographs, maps. It's the largest collection.
Yeah, it's quite an extensive collection of maps you have here. It's
Wonderful.
wonderful. Yeah. Great.
Frank Bray was the president, and we celebrated our 50th anniversary. And those collections that I just mentioned were given to us then. Since then, we have received more. We are now in a new building, having left the main street. We've already outgrown this building.
Yes. I remember at the time it seemed so large.
Yeah.
But yes, it's now overflowing, and it's located here on Escobar Street and serves as a wonderful resource for many people.
But we're still in Martinez, and
Still Martinez.
the Superior Court people can walk to us and sign the documents.
That's right. It's wonderful. Well, thank you, Betty, so much for letting me talk with you today and getting all this important information down. And the History Center is what it is today because of you. So thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it very
so much.
Okay.